Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So today we're gonna do a SheetCam 101 tutorial video so you guys can see just how easy it really is to use. Let's jump on in. So we're going to walk through everything that I wish I knew when I first opened SheetCam. So we're going to go over setting up your tool sets, importing a file, creating operations, and generating your G-code or your cut file. I would like to note that we use Fusion 360 for all of our CAD and of course SheetCam for all of our CAM. So the first thing that you are going to want to do is to set your units. So to do that, we're going to go to Options, Application Options, and we're going to go to Units. So we use inches, angular units, degrees, feed rate, IPM, thread pitch, just leave that at TPI, time, seconds. That's all we're really going to do on this screen. So just set that, depending on where you are. If you're metric, then obviously you could change this to metric, so on and so forth. So we're just gonna hit OK, save that. So when you first open SheetCam, you're gonna see this big maroon box. All this is showing you the size of your material, and it defaults it to a 4x8 sheet. So depending on what plasma table you're using, you may want to change this size. Personally, we use the Linear Crossfire Pro, so if you want to change the size of this, you're going to go to Options, Machine, and then you want to make sure that your machine type is set to jet cutting. So this is for plasma, laser, and water jet. You can change it to rotary if you're going to do any milling or routing. This video we're focusing solely though on plasma with just using sheet metal. So next you're going to want to go to your working envelope. This is where you would want to change it to the appropriate size for whatever table you're using. So for the Linear Crossfire Pro, we're 48.25 and the y-axis is 33.3. And then you're also going to want to change your table display to your same values that you just input on your working envelope. And then just hit OK. Oh, also I would like to note that you want to keep your origin to your bottom left on all of these. So that's kind of like where your work 0 is going to be. Now, we're going to want to now change the size of the actual sheet. So to do that, you just go to Options, Job Options, and just change the size here. So personally, just for ease of use for myself in loading the machine, I always get 4x8 sheets cut down into thirds. So my actual material will keep it 48, but the Y will be 32 because we have those, like I said, sheared down into thirds. So this is so when I'm nesting, I don't go over my sheet size. Now, thickness of material, you don't really need to worry about. You do want to make sure that your origin, again, is set to your bottom left. Your rapid clearance, that's just pretty much how much your torch is going to raise between cuts to avoid, hitting any potential tip-ups. So this is going to default to the 0.8. I just left it at 0.8. If you do struggle with tip-ups, you can always change this down the road. And then we just left this plunge safety clearance to the just kind of default there. Now you can see that this all changed. So the gray is your actual table size, and then the maroon is your appropriate sheet size. So after you have all that set up, the next thing you're going to want to do is to set up your tools. You can just go over here to Tools and create a new jet cutting tool. So just click this little icon here. And then this is where you're going to want to pretty much input, your entire cut chart. I currently on this just have 14 and 16 gauge input because that's 95% of the time what we use. So first thing you're going to want to do is uncheck this automatically generate name, and then you can just type in whatever name. So if you want to do 14 gauge type, you're going to hit plasma. So kerf width, we use the Razor Weld 45. I think most kerf widths, unless you're using fine cut consumables, is going to be around that 0.06 mark. And then you can put your appropriate feed rate in here, which for 14 gauge we use 111 IPMs. Pierce delay 0.6, pierce height 0.15, plunge rate 60 IPMs, and cut height 0.06, and pause at end of cut 0.1. So this, you want to make sure you fill this in, especially if you don't have a torch height controller. If you are using a torch height controller, some of these parameters are not as important because it's going to, do a lot of that for you. And then you want to make sure if this use lead-in settings is unchecked, you want to check it. I always recommend using lead-ins because that's going to help so you don't see, all of your individual pierces. So we have found with a lot of trial and error that the arc has been the best for us. So lead in, we like to use 0.2 with a lead out of 0.15. Lead in type it should default to normal. And then we also like, if the start at the center of circle smaller than, we like to put this at 0.75. So then we would just save that. I'm not going to save this because I already have it all input, but you guys would just hit OK. The more tools you put in, you just do this for each different material essentially. I like to name mine the amperage that I use because that's not something obviously that, SheetCam is going to generate in your G code. That's going to be what you're going to change on your actual plasma cutter. I just put that so I remember. So, when I'm cutting different materials, I don't forget to change my amperage. All right, so once you have all your tools input, then the next thing you're going to want to do is to import your first part. So to do that, you would just go to File, New Part. Do you want to import a drawing? Yes. I just created a test one, a very simple part just to show you guys. So you obviously want to make sure that if you set, your units to inches, click inches here. Metric, if you did metric, click metric. So we're inches, so we're going to keep that. We have the bottom left here for, our work 0. And then I just don't check any of these things here typically. So one thing I would like to note is when you first import a part, if you hover over this edit contours, I like to check and make sure that these colors look appropriate. So your outside cut should always be red and your inside cuts should be yellow, which they are. So that's good. I always do this because say there's an extra point or my drawing's not a clean drawing, you're not gonna have the red and yellows how they should be. And I'll show you that later. So this looks good. After you import your part, you're going to want to now do your operation. So make sure, you're on the appropriate part here. Go to this create a new jet cutting operation. This is where you're going to want to make sure that you select the appropriate offset. I can't tell you guys how often I see people posting pictures online. Why are my pierces in crazy places and why is this not looking right? A lot of the times it's because you don't have the appropriate offset. So this outside offset is what you're typically going to want to use if you have your contours appropriate when you import this part. If it's a clean drawing and everything's, hunky-dory when you import it, then this outside offset is what you're going to want to cut, because what it's going to do is automatically, and this is why SheetCam is so much faster in my opinion than Fusion, it's going to do an outside offset on your outside cut, an inside offset on all of your inside cuts. So make sure that you have your layers selected. It should automatically select it. It doesn't always for some reason. So if not, then you just hit this drop down and just click whatever it names it. And make sure you select your appropriate tool. So this is where, if you're cutting 14 gauge, you would click that, 16 gauge, so on and so forth. And see, it updates your feed rate when you select the different tools. I don't mess with any of this stuff. This is where if you wanted to change your lead-ins and lead-outs, you could. So now you have your operation. So see, it has your inside cuts as an inside offset and your outside cut as an outside offset. So that's why you want to make sure, guys, when you import these drawings that they're clean drawings. So say we don't want this, circle to completely fall out when it cuts. So we're going to insert a tab. So to do that, you just go to Edit Tabs. And then say, right here, I want there to be a tab. And same thing, we'll just put one over here too. So now what it's going to do is it's gonna, start cutting here. And if you turn these direction arrows on, you can see what direction it's actually going to go. So it's gonna go this way, stop cutting, your tip's gonna lift up, and then it's gonna start cutting again here, and then go all the way out. So that way you have, a little tab so this doesn't fall completely through. Now another thing I want to show you guys is there's a way when you have these sharp corners that you can loop them so you get a true, 90-degree angle here. So to do that, it's in your operations, and this loop sharp corners, if you switch it to triangle, now see how this changed? So what it's going to do is, as it's cutting, again, we can turn our direction on. See, it's going to be traveling down this way, and it's actually going to go a little farther, then kind of double back and then go back this way. So, in theory, this is going to give you a squarer corner, but I don't typically turn that on. This is probably more useful if you're cutting, thicker material. Like I said, we typically cut 14 and 16, sometimes 11. So it's not something I typically use, but wanted to show you guys that it is an option. Now, another thing, if you say you don't like where this is starting your cut, you can always change this. So to change this, you would just go up here to edit start points. Click that. And then now, see, I just hover over this and I can place it anywhere really. So that's, and same thing with your inside cuts. So if you want to change that. Another thing you can do is on parts that have a lot of different pierces and cuts in them, obviously this one only has 3, is you can change the order of your pierces. So to do that, you would right click and go to quick cut sequence. And so this one was already, number 1 in the sequence of 3, but say I want to change it to 2, then I would just hit 2. Now I would set that as the second cut. Now it will kind of give you this pop-up sometimes saying that the operation, is set to automatically optimize the paths. Changing it will disable the optimization. Do you want to continue? I'll just say yes. I don't use this very often, guys, but it is something you can do. So then it would take you to your next point, and you can set that as the third one, and this would be your first one, which you wouldn't want to do that because you always want your outside cut to be your last cut. But this is just to show you can change the order of your cuts. Now, I'm going to hide this operation just to show you guys something. Actually, we're going to delete it. So one thing I would like to note is if you ever need to add layers, or, say you import this part and you do your operation and it's not cutting, your inside offsets and your outside offsets appropriately, you can always make sure you have this edit contour selected. Go over your outside contour, right click, and you want to move to layer, and we're going to create a new layer, and we'll just name this outside. So now this is its own layer and these two are their own layer. So if you want to separate these, you'd have to write 2 different programs now. So you'd go to operation. Remember, layer 0 was our first imported layer, so it's going to now be your 2 circles. You would want to change that to inside offset, and then you can do your outside offset separate. So then you would do outside offset, layer outside. There you go. Again, I don't use this very often. As long as you have clean drawings, guys, you shouldn't need to separate your layers. But if you ever run into a snag and you can't figure out why it's not writing the operation appropriately, then that is an option that you can try and manually override it. Now, let's say you import this and it doesn't have, let's delete these, and it doesn't have your red and yellows how it's supposed to look. I'm going to import one that I know has an extra line in it. Sometimes, guys, when you are doing your CAD, there might be an extra line somewhere that you missed. SheetCam is pretty good at picking these up. So see down here, this white line in the red, right here, that is an extra line. So if we were to run an operation on this, now see, this didn't automatically pick up our layer. So we're just going to drop down to 0, hit OK. Okay, so now see we have 4 start points, when really this should only have 1, 2, 3. So this is where you can see that there's an extra line here. So one big thing, guys, anytime you cut anything in SheetCam is to always check your start points. Make sure there's no extra pierces anywhere, no extra lines. Even if there was just a little, extra node somewhere here, like it's going to pick it up. So to make sure that you don't cut apart and have a bunch of extra pierces places you don't want them, double check your start points, guys, before you run your G code. Very important. So next thing I want to show is nesting. So one thing that I have done that has worked really well for me is created this kind of what I like to call master list. If you look over here in my parts, these are all things that, we cut on a regular basis. So, say I get an order for an eagle flag, then I can click that, a bourbon and a whiskey. The great thing about this is then you can do your nesting. All of your operations are already set for all of these parts. So pretty much anytime I import a new part in my master list, I save it. So that way when I need to go to cut it again, it's already on my list here. If you need to rename something, you just click on the name, right click, and go to properties, and you can rename it. So say these are the 3 things I need to cut today. To nest, you're gonna go to this icon, nesting. So now see all of the parts are green. That's how you know you're in nesting. The one that's white is going to be, the one that you can move around. So now I'm just going to try and, obviously nest these on the sheet so where I have the least amount of waste, so something like that. You can zoom in and you can get pretty close. Now, if you need to turn it, like say, I don't like how this fits, I need to turn it 90 degrees. You just click on the part, you come down here to this degrees, and you can type in 90 and it'll turn it. If you can do any degrees. It doesn't have to just be by 90s. You could do, 67 degrees. So that's, how you can really try and have the best use of space. So another thing I want to show you guys is, see up here we have this kind of X, and you have all these warnings, I guess you could call them. On a lot of the smaller details, sometimes that 0.2 lead-in won't fit, so it's going to automatically just cut it without the lead-in. So like if you hover, it's like, this is going to tell you, it couldn't fit in all your lead-ins. So like if I were to go down, here, like see this is pretty small, so it couldn't fit my lead-in here. That's your call, whether you want to try and optimize your part to have a bigger area where it can still have the lead-in, or you could just run it as is. Okay, so after you've checked, that there's no extra pierces anywhere, that you like where the start points are, you don't want to change any of that. You've done your nesting, then really the last thing to do is to write your G-code or run your program. So you're just going to go to File, Run Post Processor. Make sure you save it, wherever you want it saved. And then you would just type in, your file name and then hit save. And that's going to create your G-code or your TAP program. And this is what you would take into fire control or whatever, software you're using there. So another reason I really love SheetCam is, so say I ran this program and now I have this, remnant or skeleton, whatever you want to call it. And you don't have anything else to cut today, so you want to save it for another day. You can just file, save job as, whatever you want to name it. I would say, skeleton 1. And then you can write on your remnant or skeleton, what name that you want to call it. So when you pull it up in SheetCam, it's going to pull up that appropriate remnant. I've used that time and time again just so you can keep all your remnants straight and it gets less confusing, because sometimes you might have this sheet pretty full and then you sell a big part that won't fit on this, so you want to save this as its own job. We'll just do this real quick because say my next part I need to cut isn't going to fit on this remnant. I need to start a new sheet, so we save this as its own remnant, and then we would go back to our master list. Say now I need to cut a 36-inch guitar that wasn't going to fit on that other remnant. Then, I can run post processor for this. And then if my next order comes in and it will fit on that other sheet, you can just go back to that remnant and, continue nesting off of this. So I've just found that really helpful. I have found saving all of my parts that I use over and over again on its own master list helpful. So that's just some tricks there. Another nice thing if you are, drafting a custom sign or something that you're trying to provide a quote for a customer, and, part of your formula in quoting that sign is the amount of pierces and the amount of time that it's going to take your machine to actually cut that part, is there is a simulator in SheetCam that can help you determine all of those parameters. So let's say I have, this is my custom sign that I need to provide a quote for. We have it imported, we have our operation already completed. So you're just going to go to File, Job Report. And for rapid speed, you just want to put the max capacity, the highest speed that your machine can travel. So for the Crossfire Pro, that is 300 IPMs. And now this is going to give you essentially your job report. So, here it's showing what tool you're using and your part. So there's your feed rate, your lead ins here. This is the bread and butter here, guys, your operation time and your number of pierces. And then it also gives you your total cut distance. So that can be very beneficial when you're trying to, work those parameters into any custom signs that you may be trying to create, a bid for. So next I'm going to show you, say you got an order for, 10 of these bourbon signs. So there is a way where you don't have to just, copy it 9 times. We can just right click and do not scale. Right click and click array parts. And you can choose, how many columns by rows. We'll do 5 by 2. Hit OK. One thing I want to note is, see how these are overlapping? One thing you want to make sure, we're going to undo, you can just Control Z. I did that on purpose to show you guys. You want to make sure when you do this, so we'll do 5 by 2 again, is see this part spacing? You want a gap. It's going to default to 0. So if our lead in's 0.2, we want at least a 1/4 inch spacing in between. So now we'll hit OK. Haha, now see? So that way they're not overlapping anymore. So that is a very quick way where you can nest, if you're cutting a bunch of these at the same time, multiple. Now, say you have, we're gonna just undo that. Say you have someone that, wants a sign that's bigger than your standard size. So you can scale by just right clicking, scale, and just put your scale factor. So if this is, say it's 12 inches tall and they want it 18 inches tall, then you would have your scale factor of 1.5 and hit OK. And it's just going to scale it for you. Another thing you can do is, if you ever need to measure within SheetCam, you can right click, go to measure, and then just set your first point, and you can kind of just drag it up and measure. So this sign's actually around 10.3. So that's how you can measure within SheetCam. All right, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's kind of the more basic things that you can do in SheetCam. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, please feel free to give the video a like and subscribe. And please, if you guys have any tips or tricks, I'm sure I missed a lot, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching.